For this particular video, we are going to be talking about the factors which may affect the rate of photosynthesis. Rate of photosynthesis just implies how fast photosynthesis is taking place. So, there are three factors that we are going to be looking at that may affect the rate of photosynthesis. But when you look at this particular diagram here, which shows you the overall process of photosynthesis, which I've divided into light-dependent reaction and light-independent reaction, we notice that the three main factors which can affect the rate of photosynthesis are light intensity, or the strength of the light given to the organism, or also the carbon dioxide concentration, or the temperature. Now, how does light intensity actually affect the rate of photosynthesis? Think about it. Light is actually required, in the light-dependent reaction. And because of light, it is able to produce reduced NADPs and ATPs, which will then be used in the light-independent reaction, or the Kelvin cycle. So, logically speaking, when you have more light or a higher light intensity, more absorption of light will be done by the pigments in the thylakoids or the photosystems, if you want to be more specific, and therefore there will be a higher rate of light-dependent reaction, and it will produce more reduced NADPs and more ATPs. And when you have more reduced NADPs and more ATPs, obviously it speeds up the overall rate of photosynthesis, because then it can be used in the light-independent reaction, so more organic molecules can be made. There is an important caveat or condition here, but we will cover that in a while. The second factor that may affect the rate of photosynthesis is carbon dioxide concentration. Now, if you go back to the diagram, what is carbon dioxide required for, by the way? Carbon dioxide is required for the Kelvin cycle to happen, or the light-independent reaction to happen, where, as you can see, carbon dioxide will have to bind together to RuBP, catalyzed by the enzyme known as Rubisco, and it forms the 6-carbon compound, which becomes PG and then TP, and just continues going on. The wheels of the bus go round and round. Fine. But here's the thing. When you have more CO2, what happens? More carboxylation will happen. So, the so-called wheel or the Kelvin cycle happens much faster. Simple as that. So if a question asks you, how does carbon dioxide concentration affect the rate of photosynthesis? More CO2 equals more carboxylation with RuBP, therefore a higher rate of light-independent reaction, so more organic compounds are produced as well. Last but not least is temperature. Temperature is quite easy, because when you talk about temperature in biology, you always try to link it to enzymes. So are there any enzymes important in photosynthesis? You bet. Rubisco, basically. And not just Rubisco, there are so many different types of enzymes that are required in photosynthesis. Another enzyme that is required in photosynthesis is ATP synthase, which is needed to produce ATP. There is another enzyme in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. The name of that enzyme is called NADP reductase. You don't need to remember that one, but that function of that enzyme is to produce reduced NADP. The point I'm trying to make here is enzymes are pivotal for photosynthesis to even be carried out. But if you want to focus on one particular enzyme, just focus on Rubisco and you're good. Alright? And normally, chapter 3 of AS enzymes, when you increase the temperature, there will be more ES complex formations, for example, the ATP synthase or Rubisco. Therefore, there's a higher rate of light-dependent reaction and also light-independent reaction. So more photosynthesis takes place, or a higher rate of photosynthesis takes place. However, if the temperature is too high or above the optimum temperature, enzymes may denature. Remember, what causes enzymes to denature again? This happens due to the hydrogen bonds in the enzymes being broken down. So the 3D structure of the enzymes change. They cannot form ES complex, so they cannot catalyze the chemical reaction. So photosynthesis in this case will reduce. So it's good to just understand. You have to sometimes link it back to chapter 3 or even chapter 2 of AS. So knowledge from chapter 2 and chapter 3, which are biological molecules and enzymes, are still important for A2. So please be reminded of that. Now, one very important thing to understand here is as follows. Photosynthesis is a chemical reaction that involves many factors. We've just talked about that earlier, because think about it. The light has to be absorbed by photosystems and also water, and then light dependent reaction happens, and because of that ATP and reduced NADP are produced, and those two products will be used in the light independent reaction where carbon dioxide is required to produce the organic molecules. All right, now a very important thing to cover over here is something known as limiting factors. Limiting factors are just basically a factor which is in short supply, and increasing the amount of this factor will increase the rate of reaction. Now, a lot of times students have problems understanding limiting factors. I'm going to try my best to teach this to the best of my ability. As you can see here, I'm representing the light dependent reaction where the light is absorbed by that green colored thing is sort of like, I guess you can say photosystem or just the thylakoid or whatever, and it produced ATP, which I've represented as a purple triangle, and reduced NADP, which I've represented as is that purple? I don't know, maroon, purple, just a circle, okay? A reduced and a circle, a lighter purple circle. Looks pink to me. No, it doesn't look pink. It's maroon. Is that maroon? Yeah, I think it's maroon. Anyway, so the ATP is like a triangle, a symbol of a triangle, and the reduced NADP is a circle. All right, the amount doesn't matter in this case. Don't worry so much about that. And in the light independent reaction, the carbon dioxide, which I've represented in a red triangle, yeah, that's definitely red. It will bind together to the active site of the Rubisco enzyme. And I didn't put the RUBP in this case, but it joins together with RUBP. And with the help of ATP, which will bind to that part of the arrow, the arrow just represents the Kelvin cycle, and the reduced NADP binds to that particular part of the arrow. It allows the Kelvin cycle to happen. This is just to tell you that ATP and NADP are required in the light independent reaction to produce the organic molecules. You don't need to memorize this diagram, but it helps me explain limiting factors in detail. Now, imagine for a moment we have 3 carbon dioxide molecules represented in the 3 red triangles, and for the sake of simplicity, I'm also going to have 3 Rubisco molecules because I don't want there to be limited amounts of enzymes. Now, because there are 3 carbon dioxide molecules, I'm going to represent, look at the arrow for the Kelvin cycle. There are 3 slots for the ATP and 3 slots for the reduced NADP. Because the more carbon dioxide you have, the more ATP and reduced NADP you also need. That's just the logic of the matter right there. If I were to just draw out a graph here, and I want to see the effect of light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. So let's look at this. Now, if I shine 1 unit of light, let's just say 1 unit of light is just a low light intensity, and it produces 1 triangle of ATP and 1 circle of reduced NADP. So far so good. That 1 ATP molecule will bind to 1 part of the arrow, and the reduced NADP can bind to 1 part of the arrow. And in this case, it only produces 1 organic molecule. Now, why does it only produce 1 organic molecule even though you have 3 carbon dioxide there? Well, you do not have enough ATP and reduced NADP to make the Kelvin cycle as fast as possible. That's as simple as that. Okay? Now, let's try another one. I have 2 units of light. The more light you give the thylakoid, it produces more ATP and more reduced NADP. So more are available in the light independent reaction. So in this case, you can get 2 organic molecules. That's good. So in the graph over here, as you see there, as I increase light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis increases. When I give 3 units of light, guess what? Yes, it produces more ATP and also more reduced NADP. And what happens to the Kelvin cycle in this case? You're right, because now it has more ATP and more reduced NADP to drive the Kelvin cycle to make it happen faster. So in this case over here, the Kelvin cycle happens much faster, so it produces more organic molecules, 3 organic molecules in this case. So as I increase the light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis further increases. From 0 to 3 units of light, the light intensity is referred to as the limiting factor. The reason is because the only way I have to increase the rate of photosynthesis is to increase the light intensity and nothing else. That's why light intensity is the limiting factor. Now, imagine if I give 4 units of light and I produce 4 triangles of ATP and 4 circles of reduced NADP. Will the Kelvin cycle happen much faster? The answer is no, because in this case, I only have 3 of the triangles binding to that particular part and 3 of the reduced NADP required for the light-independent reaction, but there is still a surplus of that triangle and that circle, which I've highlighted, that is not being used. Why not? So in this case, it does produce only 3 organic molecules. So the question is, why doesn't the rate of photosynthesis go higher? The reason is because in this situation over here, there is not enough carbon dioxide in the light-independent reaction to increase the rate of the Kelvin cycle or to increase the rate of photosynthesis. So beyond 3 units of light, carbon dioxide concentration is now the limiting factor. So if I want to increase, if I'm giving 4 units of light, the rate of photosynthesis will remain constant. It levels off or it plateaus. So in this case here, if you wanted to increase the rate of photosynthesis, the only thing that you can do in this situation here is to increase the carbon dioxide concentration so that more carbon dioxide is available in the light independent reaction to produce more organic molecules. It's as simple as that. Okay, by having 3 carbon dioxide molecules over here represented by those 3 triangles, I can only produce a maximum of 3 organic molecules. This is just the way it is. If I want to get 4 organic molecules, I need to have more carbon dioxide over here. That's what you have to understand. So beyond this point of the graph here, carbon dioxide concentration is the limiting factor. Temperature also is the limiting factor because if you were to increase temperature a little bit, maybe the CO2s can bind to the Rubisco much faster to increase the rate of photosynthesis in general. Right? Now, let's try another one. So in this case over here, we're going to see the effect of carbon dioxide concentration on the rate of photosynthesis. And I'm only going to give 2 units of light. In this case, carbon dioxide concentration is the independent variable, which we will change. Light intensity is the constant variable, which means to say it has to be kept the same. Now, with those 2 units of light, I get 2 triangles of ATP and 2 triangles of reduced NADP. But look at the carbon dioxide concentration now. The carbon dioxide concentration, I only have 1 carbon dioxide. Can I make a lot of organic molecules? No. That 1 carbon dioxide can only bind to 1 Rubisco, so it only requires 1 slot for the ATP and 1 slot for the reduced NADP, which I've highlighted in the arrow for the Kelvin cycle. So in this case, 1 molecule of carbon dioxide only uses 1 ATP over there and 1 reduced NADP. So does it produce a lot of organic molecules? No, it doesn't. It produces very little organic molecules. For example, just 1 organic molecule. I've plotted that in the graph. All right. What if I have 2 carbon dioxide molecules? Now, with 2 carbon dioxide molecules, Kelvin cycle can happen a bit faster. Why? Because, well, there's more carbon dioxide. There you go. Okay, so I've added 2 slots over there. The yellow slot is for the one for the first carbon dioxide. The Blue slots in the arrow are the ones where I've just highlighted, are the ones for the second carbon dioxide molecule. So the more carbon dioxide I add, I have ATPs, they can bind to those two slots. Reduced NADPs can bind to those two slots. So can I produce more organic molecules? Yes, I can produce more organic molecules in this case. So by increasing carbon dioxide concentration, the rate of photosynthesis increases, as we can see there in the graph. So that's good. Now, let's put the third carbon dioxide molecule, which I've highlighted in purple. Yeah, I think that's purple, whatever. And because there's more carbon dioxide, Kelvin cycle can happen much faster. So I'm going to add more slots for the ATP, and because it needs more reduced NADPs and ATPs, which I've also highlighted there in the arrow. Now, here's the interesting thing. I've added more carbon dioxide. Will the Kelvin cycle or the rate of photosynthesis increase? The answer is no. The rate will still remain at 2. Okay, why though? Because I only have 2 triangles of ATP and 2 triangles of reduced NADP. The third slot for the purple one, for the extra ATP, there are no ATP or reduced NADPs over there. So in this case, the rate of reaction remains constant at 2. So from 1 to 2 carbon dioxide concentration, the carbon dioxide concentration is the limiting factor. But beyond 2, that means 2 to 3, it doesn't have enough ATP or reduced NADP, which means to say, if you want to have more ATP and reduced NADP, what do you need to do? You need to add more light. Therefore, beyond 2 units of carbon dioxide concentration, light intensity is now the limiting factor. So because it's the limiting factor in this case, if you wanted to increase the rate of photosynthesis, you need to increase the light intensity and also temperature. That is what we have to know for this right here. So I hope you understand this part in detail.